Hey guys, Mike Toy, Bonsai Boise. So this is part 2 of my tiger bark ficus bonsais. I did one last week with my upright trunk, and this is my S-shape trunk. So I'm going to give it a little trim, going to repot it, and I've got some structural flaws in this one as well. If you watch the last one, you see that I dealt with that on the last one too. Had to make some big cuts. And here I've got some perplexing decisions to make in there. So give you a little look at it here, and then we'll dive in. We'll start doing some trimming. We'll see what the roots look like, and we'll put it in its new pot, which is kind of a, I don't know what to call it, like a deep blue. Anyway, let's get started. Okay, so here it is. It's healthy enough, can't complain. Last year had kind of a scare. Really hot day last summer. I left the house and this was sitting up on the balcony. The weather was great. It wasn't windy or rainy or stormy or anything. It was just a normal hot summer day. Anyways, I left. Wouldn't you know, a storm rolled in. Came home like 6 hours later, and it had fallen off the 3rd floor balcony and was just laying there, roots exposed, and I freaked out. Just kind of repotted it again, and it bounced back. So, hey, what do you know? It's got that backward lean to it. I don't know if you saw a moment ago, but I didn't intentionally do that. I think I just sort of potted it up in a hurry and probably a bit of a panic because of the way I found it. And it just sort of settled in, and there you can see it better. It's leaning back. So we're going to straighten that out today too. I like a little lean in my trees, but that's a bit too extreme for me. And it takes away from the S shape. It's like got too many styles going at once. In the meantime, I'm just going through and I'm just trimming it up, not getting drastic yet. And my general principle for this is on any branch that's got more than, let's say, 3 or 4 leaf sets or nodes, I trim it back to about 2, sometimes 1. And I try to do it so that I leave the top leaf as facing out so that the branch will grow outward. Now, what you're going to see in a moment here, once I clean it up a little bit, there are some structural flaws. And I know what you're probably thinking, because I hear this a lot when I point this out to people. They look at it and they say, it looks great. I don't see the problem. I don't know what you're worried about. And it does, it looks good. But it's breaking one of the other general principles that I try to follow, that I would recommend people follow. And that is that you want a branch to split into 2 branches, and then those 2 to split into 4, and so on. What you don't want is one branch to split into 3 or more. Because what happens is where that split occurs, you get a big growth bulge in the branch, and it just looks goofy. It doesn't have that smooth, tapered effect where it starts at the base and is real thick, and then it gets gradually skinnier as it goes up. What you get is thickness here, thickness there, thinness here, thinness there. It doesn't make sense. It just looks weird. And that's what's happening. So right off the bat, if you look, you'll see that there are 3 branches coming out of the main spot right at the first 2 branches. If you start at the bottom and look up here in a second, you'll see there are 2 branches, one to the left, one to the right, and then the trunk goes up. So that's 3 branches. So starting to get a bit of a growth bulge, and then up top it's a little clustered up there as well. And we'll do a close-up look. I'll show you what I mean. So that branch, I decided, not willy-nilly, I looked at it for a long time. I decided that the branch on the lower right has to go. And then that right where I'm pointing to there, there's a big bulge And I don't want that. You can kind of see it there. There's just a lot of branches coming out of one general spot. And I couldn't decide. I really did kind of agonize over this for a while. Couldn't decide which way to go. I knew some bold cuts were needed, and here comes one. There it is. I'll tell you why I decided with that one. Because it was either that, or maybe some of the branches in the middle, where that high traffic area is. But I did not do the ones in the middle. I decided to make the bold cuts on the outside, even though it's going to look goofy for a little while. By the way, I'm making a little more than a flush cut. I'm actually cutting into it a little bit. That way when that heals over, it'll heal over flush, hopefully. Sometimes they don't. They have the audacity to grow their own way sometimes. Have to look at that. So the reason I did not make any big bold cuts in the middle yet is because it's harder to fill in a big bald spot in the middle than it is to fill in a bald spot on the outside, because trees want to grow out. They don't like growing in. They grow in all kinds of weird directions, and it just takes a long time. It's very frustrating to get it to look right again. See, this one I agonized over even more than the first one, because I just couldn't decide. It's like the outside branches were technically okay. It's those middle crossing branches that are the problem. As you can see, they kind of just cross each other, and there's just a lot coming out of one general location there. So I debated with myself, should I get even more drastic? But I chickened out a little bit. I thought that's drastic enough for now. Plus, I don't know exactly how it's going to look. I'm trying to visualize with it more upright like that rather than leaning back. So at some point I'm going to have to wire these down a little bit, I think. That'll open it up more for some inside growth, which will give me more options down the road to lose one of those major branches that is filling it in the inside. But we'll kick that can down the road for a little bit. For now, let's take a look here at the soil and the roots. I can't even remember what the roots looked like when I picked it up off the ground. I think it was hyperventilating. Not really, I'm being dramatic, but I was freaking out. So I thought, oh my gosh, how long has it been down here? Is it dead? So I just sort of stuck it in there, potted it up. That doesn't look terrible. This is the dirtiest part of bonsai right here. It's the repotting and the raking out of all the old soil. It doesn't help that I tend to use my hands a lot instead of a rake. So take a look at more goofiness. So we've got roots here that are crisscrossing, and then a big bald spot right there. I gotta be honest, this tree was kind of frustrating me last night when I worked on it. I was like, gosh, it's got so much potential and so much going for it, but then just big problem spots here and there that don't want to work with me. So let's take a look at the roots here. It actually has a little bit better root system than the one last week, if you watched that video. I'm not sure why. But we've got some big major bald spots, and then right where some roots could have potentially filled that bald spot, they decided, nah, we're going to grow in the opposite direction. So I had to make a few cuts. Again, not getting drastic. And just a little bit of backstory too on why I'm doing some of this now. It's mid-March. We're heading into spring and then summer, so I'm trying to get some of these tropicals ready for that. They've been in the grow tent all winter, so they're all pretty much healthy and growing. So it's safe enough to do this now. But I want to have them already trimmed up, repotted, and ready to go for the growing season, rather than interrupting their growing pattern by doing it, right when they take off or right in the middle, even though they do tend to bounce back quickly. So there's a look at the root system after I made a few choice cuts. Here's the new pot. And I tend to just use some pea gravel or something pretty coarse like that to cover up the drainage holes before I pour the soil in. I don't always, but when I think about it, I do. I couldn't really even tell you if I notice a difference performance-wise, but I like to think it makes a difference. The soil here that I'm using is my typical mix of perlite, pine bark, safety absorb, and this one actually has a little bit of volcanic rock, if you can see it there. I sift it, and I sift it, and I sift it some more. I could sift until my base turns blue, but still, when I pour soil in, dust clouds everywhere. So you can never really get it all the way out, I guess. I decided not to wire this in. Takes a little bit of wrestling with it and cajoling and persuading to get it to stand right the way that I wanted it to. And from here, I just work the soil into the roots so that there's no air pockets in there. Luckily, there's not a ton of roots for that to occur in this case. Once you get some really mature trees that have a good radial root base and flare, that's when it becomes a little more important because air pockets can hide. Once I get it packed in there pretty good, I give it a good watering. That also helps sort of bond the soil together and hold it in place and stabilize it. Then I'm going to put some rocks in there to stabilize it even more. And then one other thing I'll point out that's not always on cameras, even though I do that, I water it real good to hold it in place, I take it down to the sink and I really flush it with water. Because it's hard to tell, but that water is very cloudy at first because of all that dust. So there it is. As you can see on the back side, I don't hate the way it turned out, by the way. I'm not in love with how tall it is. I would have rather had some growth down low, which is what made some of those cuts decisions difficult. But you see how it's kind of like flat on the back, sort of just almost two-dimensional if you're looking at it straight on. Yeah, so I want to have it fill in more on the back and on the sides. Right now it kind of looks like a boot camp flat top. But I don't hate it. I still love this tree. It's got some work to do. It's got a ways to go, but I like it. So appreciate you watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Have a good rest of your day.